But I want to get to CNN's senior legal analyst, Ellie Honig, and former federal state prosecutor, Brandon Van Grack. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. Ellie, I'm going to start with you. The Mar-a-Lago affidavit, less than 4 hours after the DOJ submitted their proposed redactions, the judge gave it the green light to be released to the public. Now, we're going to see by noon tomorrow what happens here, how much we get, if they redacted things pertaining to witnesses and the ongoing investigation or grand jury investigation. What are we going to learn, in your estimation?
Well, Don, you are right to expect a lot of black redaction ink. And indeed, DOJ will be blacking out a lot of the most important information, the most sensitive information about witnesses, about ongoing investigation. However, Laura Coates is also correct when she says we are still going to learn quite a bit from this affidavit tomorrow. Here's some things I'm looking at. First of all, I think we are going to get chapter and verse on the whole protracted negotiation between archives and DOJ on the one hand and the Trump team on the other. We've seen some really good reporting on that. Now we're going to get it rock solid. Just how long, just how many times they tried to do it the nice way before they had to go in with a search warrant. Also, I'm looking to see if there's any description of the documents that DOJ and archives got back from Mar-a-Lago before the search warrant. Because remember, they got some documents back before they went in and did that search warrant. And finally, there could be pieces of this investigation that are no longer active, that don't require confidentiality. So we could get some sense of what the investigation is. So we will see in sometime in the next 13 hours and 53 minutes, not that anyone's counting.
So Brandon, listen, it's interesting because nothing that has come out has been good for Team Trump, or Trump and his legal team and his supporters. Nothing has been good so far. The previously released documents reveal 3 federal crimes the Justice Department was looking at as part of their investigation: violations of the Espionage Act, obstruction of justice, and the criminal handling of government records. You have personally investigated dozens of cases involving the Espionage Act. So what will you be looking for in this affidavit as it pertains to possible violations?
Well, I think there's going to be more meat on the bones than I probably would have predicted last week, based in part on not just the fact that there's been a lot of reporting and disclosures in the last week, but the fact that the judge so quickly agreed to the redactions that the Department of Justice proposed, would suggest that, in fact, the department really was more narrowly tailored. But I think that there's going to be some substance there. And the first thing I'd look at...
So tell me, why do you, before, I'm going to let you finish that, but why do you think there's going to be more meat on the bones?
Well, just to be clear, most of it will be blacked out. But
okay.
The Department of Justice, even in their argument, conceded there are parts of this that would not negatively impact the investigation. And that was a week ago. And in the past week, we've seen communications with the archives and other disclosures. We've also seen the filing from President Trump and his attorneys to stop the search and impose a special master. So I think the reality is there will be more substance in there than I think we would normally expect to see.
So I interrupted you. Did you get your point across? You said number one. And
well, so yeah. In a search warrant, one of the first parts of it is it talks about the laws that may have been violated and the elements of the offense. And though some of that will just simply be a recitation of the law, there will be descriptions there. And in particular, with respect to the law concerning the mishandling of classified information, that's Title 18 United States Code 793. There are a lot of parts to it, and there are parts that actually concern espionage and by espionage I mean the actual transmission or disclosure of classified information. And thus far the department has indicated it's focused on retention, just the handling of it, but it's going to be interesting to see if they describe it and how clear they are it's just retention. And there's one other piece, which is the law, the law that I mentioned. There's this other section that's very seldomly investigated or prosecuted, 793F. It concerns gross negligence, and it was actually at issue in the Clinton investigation. And it'll be interested to see if, in fact, they mention it. I don't think they will, but if they do, it would signal that this investigation is sort of broader than I would have anticipated.
Well, let me just ask you, because you said you think most of it is going to be redacted. You think it'll be black, right? But there's going to be plenty of redactions. But the length, will the length of the document offer any clues as to how extensive this investigation is? Like if it's a long one or if it's a short one, or what do you think?
I think that's right. I think the length is another key piece here. Now, search warrants can be anywhere from a dozen to, 70 or 80 pages. And I think, especially when we talk about the factual recitation of an investigation that the department itself has said is only in its very early stages, if we're talking about dozens and dozens of pages of factual information that is in part redacted, I think it's going to confirm that there's a lot of information that we don't know. In fact, the department keeps stressing in its arguments before this judge, there are specific investigative techniques that have been utilized that they're intending to continue to utilize in their investigation. We don't know what that is. We can speculate, but we don't know. And so I think the more pages we see of even redactions, the more confirmation that this is a well-developed investigation.
Ellie Honey, what about the urgency? I mean, something clearly happened to prompt the DOJ to move to the search and seizure stage in this investigation. Will there be any clues about that?
Well, Don, so it's important to understand legally, all that DOJ has to do to justify this search warrant is show that they established probable cause of those crimes and that a federal judge approved that. We know that that happened. But of course, there's more than the legalities involved here. There's the politics of it. One of the main complaints that Donald Trump has raised is, why did they just go to this sort of extreme step of the search warrant? And I think tomorrow, when we see this affidavit, I think they're going to lay out in detail the entire history of negotiations. And Don, every time we see new reporting about this, we learn that the whole negotiation was longer and longer and extended back farther and farther in time. In fact, we learned earlier today that it even started when Donald Trump was still in office, that Pat Cipollone acknowledged that these documents are supposed to go over.
Well, simply, isn't the retention of classified, highly classified documents to the highest level, some of the highest levels, isn't that enough to have a search and seizure of, regardless of who it is? I mean, shouldn't that just be enough? No?
Absolutely. That's one of the 3 statutes that DOJ used. They brought to a federal judge. They
so
established
then what's the point of all of this?
And that was one of the bases for the search warrant.
So yeah. So
well, you got it. First of all, you have to get the documents back, and second of all, I think having probable cause is one thing.
No, what I'm saying is,
DOJ has said,
you're saying that they have to justify it. The fact that he has these documents and has not turned them over, isn't that enough to have them go in and get them?
So I
go
think,
ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, I think there are 2 pieces of that, which is there's the technical answer and the answer in terms of what justified the search here, which technically the law that in terms of the Espionage Act is the retention of national defense information, classified information. So in theory, that would be enough. That's not what happened here, which even after the Department of Justice learned about the classified information, they communicated with the former president's attorneys, and they issued a subpoena. This was a cooperative engagement, and I think it signals that if that's all that happened, if the Department of Justice in June, when they went to Mar-a-Lago, obtained the rest of the classified documents, I don't think we would be talking about a search warrant. I think it's possible we wouldn't be talking about criminal charges. Something happened, and we don't know what that is, but something happened, and it seems to be related to this obstruction charge, that fundamentally changed the nature of this investigation. And until we know what that is, ultimately we don't know the strength of the case. We don't know the likelihood, but something was serious enough that it led to this unprecedented search of a former president's residence.
Ellie, you want to do the math again? How long will it be before we find out? You're better at math than I am.
13 hours, 47 minutes.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot. Thanks so much. I'll see you soon. Guys. President Biden back in the campaign trail tonight, blasting what he calls a defeated former president and MAGA Republicans, and calling MAGA Republicanism semi-fascism. The White House Press Secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, she's standing by on the White House lawn right now. She's going to tell us what that means after the break.